The wind bit through the narrow city street like a warning, sharp and cold, slicing past the woman who stood frozen on the marble steps of the Marcellus corporate tower. Her fingers trembled around the edges of a simple, worn-out brown envelope, an envelope that did not look like it belonged anywhere near the gold-plated doors she was about to enter. The world around her moved in a blur of hurried footsteps, honking cars, and flashing lights, yet inside her chest everything felt painfully slow. Her heartbeat, her breath, her courage, all fighting to stay steady as she repeated to herself that she was only here to return what wasn't hers. She whispered those words like a prayer, clutching the envelope that had turned her last 3 days upside down, and stepped into the giant building where marble floors glimmered like frozen lakes and glass walls reflected her small, exhausted figure back at her. She didn't belong here. Anyone could see that. Her hair tied loosely, her shoes old and faded, and her eyes carrying the heavy weight of years of struggle. But she walked anyway, because doing the right thing had always been the one thing she never compromised on, no matter how hard life had been. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, honesty, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people see these stories and keeps this channel alive. The receptionist looked up, confused but polite, as the woman approached the desk. She introduced herself in a small voice, her name was Mara, and said she needed to return something important to the owner of Marcellus Enterprises. The receptionist seemed skeptical, but after a brief call upstairs, directed her to the 42nd floor. The floor where the city's youngest self-made millionaire, Adrian Marcellus, ruled his empire. When the elevator opened, Mara stepped into a space so luxurious it felt unreal. Golden lighting, expensive artwork, and a panoramic skyline made her feel even smaller than she already did. She held the envelope close to her chest, silently rehearsing the explanation for how she found it. 3 days ago, she had been cleaning rooms at a budget motel when she discovered it wedged behind a bedside drawer. Inside were documents, real estate agreements, financial papers, and legal contracts, all belonging to Adrian Marcellus. She guessed he must have visited under a different name, and she knew instantly that whoever lost such papers could lose everything without them. So she tracked the address. She called the company. She saved money from her part-time shifts to travel across town because returning the envelope could mean the difference between truth and chaos. It wasn't hers to keep. And even though she was living paycheck to paycheck, even though her bills were piling up and her daughter's school fees were months overdue, Mara never once thought about keeping anything or using the information inside. She just wanted to return it. She knocked gently on the door of the office she'd been directed to. Inside, Adrian Marcellus stood with 2 business partners, laughing loudly in a room filled with luxury furniture and city views stretching to the horizon. When Mara entered, all 3 men looked at her as though she had just wandered into the wrong world. She explained, her voice trembling, that she was there to return an envelope that belonged to him. She placed it gently on the table like it was something sacred, something delicate. Adrian stared at it, then at her, then burst into laughter. Sharp, careless, dismissive laughter that echoed across the room. He assumed she was here for reward money. He assumed she was playing some cheap trick. He assumed she was lying. Mara stood quietly as he joked with his colleagues, mocking the idea that a motel cleaner would walk across the city to return documents she could have sold or used. He teased her patched-up shoes, her worn-out clothes, her nervous hands. Every laugh felt like a slap, but she didn't break. She simply said, "I'm just returning this envelope, nothing more." Her calmness only fueled more laughter from the millionaire who thought the world followed him. He opened the envelope gradually, certain it contained nothing valuable, but the moment he saw the first page, his signature, his land title, his confidential contract, his face drained of color, the laughter died in his throat. The room fell tense. "How did you get this?" he demanded, suddenly panicking. Before Mara could respond, the office door swung open. A tall man in a blue suit stormed in, breathless, eyes wide as he spotted the envelope on the table. He was Adrian's legal manager, Lucas Hale, the real owner of the documents entrusted with carrying them that day. Lucas's voice cracked as he said, "You found it. You actually found it." Everyone stared. Adrian's arrogance melted instantly. Lucas walked toward Mara with disbelief and gratitude mixing across his face. He explained that the envelope was lost during a crisis negotiation. If it had not been returned, the company would have faced a lawsuit worth millions. Adrian's entire empire could have collapsed. Suddenly, the same woman who had been mocked minutes ago became the only reason the company still stood, and that was when everything changed. Lucas asked Mara how she found it, and she told her story, quietly, simply, without exaggeration. She told them how she didn't have enough money for transportation, but still came, how she worked double shifts at the motel and hadn't been home for dinner with her daughter in days, how she believed that returning the envelope was the right thing to do even though life rarely did right by her. Adrian listened silently, shame spreading across his face. He saw a woman who had nothing, yet still chose honesty, a woman who could have taken advantage of something valuable, yet protected it, a woman he had insulted for simply doing the right thing. Lucas thanked her repeatedly, but Mara kept saying she didn't need anything. She just wanted to give it back to the person it belonged to. Adrian stepped forward, his voice softer than before. He asked if she needed help. Mara shook her head. She didn't want favors. She didn't trust favors. She lived her life earning every breath of dignity, but when she tried to leave, Lucas gently insisted on escorting her downstairs. On the way, he noticed how tired she looked, how worn her hands were, and how she smiled despite everything. They talked about her daughter, her work, her dreams she no longer remembered how to chase. After she left the building, Lucas didn't stop thinking about her, and neither did Adrian. That evening, Lucas looked up the motel where she worked. What he found broke him: unpaid wages, staff mistreated, long hours, no medical benefits, a single mother trapped in a cycle that had no doorway out. The next morning, Adrian did something no one expected. He visited the motel in person. The owner panicked, thinking he was being sued for some fraud he didn't yet realize he'd committed. But Adrian wasn't there for that. He was looking for Mara. He found her cleaning a hallway, her back aching, her mind busy with her endless worries. She froze when she saw him, confused, worried she had done something wrong. Adrian apologized, truly apologized, for humiliating her. He told her that he had acted like a man who had everything yet understood nothing. Then he offered her a job, a real job. A position in his company's corporate housekeeping division, with benefits, holidays, stable hours, and a salary 3 times what she was earning. Mara refused at first, thinking it was charity or pity disguised as kindness. But Lucas stepped in, telling her she had saved their entire company. This wasn't charity, this was justice. She finally accepted, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Weeks passed, and Mara's life began to transform. Her daughter returned to school. She moved into a safer apartment. Her health improved. She laughed again, something she hadn't done in years. Adrian visited her department often, not as a boss wanting perfection, but as a friend wanting to learn what real life looked like outside the glass walls of his tower. Mara taught him more about humanity than any business mentor ever had. He learned humility because of her. He learned gratitude because of her. He learned that wealth means nothing if it cannot build something meaningful in someone else's life. Near the end of the year, at the company's annual dinner, Adrian called Mara on stage. She froze, confused and nervous, but he gently explained to the entire audience how a woman with almost nothing taught him what it meant to be a man worth respecting. He talked about honesty, dignity, courage, and compassion. He said that she reminded him that the world still had good people, people worth fighting for, worth helping, worth admiring. The entire hall gave her a standing ovation. Tears streamed down her face as she realized she was finally seen, not as a cleaner, not as a struggling mother, but as a human being of extraordinary strength, and in that moment she understood something she had forgotten along the way. kindness always returns home. Always, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It keeps these stories alive. Special request, before we end, comment kindness always wins. If you believe good people still exist.